Good morning, or good afternoon. It's already afternoon. I would like to share just the project that is starting, that is trying to explore the intergenerational resilience transmission by using arts. It's a project that is funded by the College University of London, and we are working on it together with Associate Professor Kirili from that university. I will a little bit talking about the background and the context, where the project is coming from, the methodology, the preliminary findings, the implication, and the way forward. Professor Mutesa talked a little bit, not a little bit, deeply about trauma. And I will a little bit bring the resilience. If we are going to talk, can we talk trauma or resilience? So we started by asking ourselves, how do we remember what we have not lived? How can children remember what they have not experienced? So Ivan Nyagatare is a child, is a young, from the young generation who have not experienced genocide. He provided two free ways of remembering what he has not lived. The first way is to remember what he has not lived through those who lived it. The second way is to remember by trying to pray the Lord that it cannot happen again. And thirdly, it's to remember by just, there is no need to live it, and there is no need to remember it now. So those are the three ways Nyagatare gift. So, as I said, can we talk about trauma? This is a trauma. There is a banana who is experiencing trauma. Or can we talk about resilience? The two things, trauma or resilience, among our next generation. Of course, as Professor Mutesa defined well what's intergenerational trauma, it's about passing the effects of trauma from generation to other generation. That's trauma. That's intergenerational trauma. But of course, there are so many researches that have been conducted about intergenerational trauma, about intergenerational pain transmission. And in Rwanda, Mutesa talked really deeply the problematic of mental health. That research really showing the big number of people living with mental health issues in Rwanda, among the general population, among survivors of genocide. So that's really an evidence that we are having psychological mental health issues in Rwanda. So there is a little bit a challenge, mainly a challenge on focusing only on trauma and on trauma transmission. And I will say that sometimes the Western concept, the Western intervention, they don't involve, the Western, let me say, origin of biological, psychological, social framework, sometimes don't engage the socio-political, the culture of the context where those frameworks are being implemented. That's one of the biggest challenge. That's why this innovation or this creation of the Uwihoreye is trying to address that challenge by mainly focusing on resilience and healing through social reconnection, arts, and empowering by creating culturally appropriate materials and tools to cooperate with the Rwandan community, and through the co-creation of those materials, the co-creation by children and adolescents themselves and families. I like to say, most of the time, where trauma is, the resilience is allowed. And Michael White said, no one is a passive recipient of trauma. And the trauma is a way of responding. And that's why somehow, where trauma is, the resilience is allowed. And the arts, the use of arts, because I like also to say that everybody is an artist of his life. By arts, we find the beautiful and the simple tools to enable that resilience. So there is a phases of those that process. Of course, in January, February, it's where the project has been funded, and we piloted a workshop where we identified children from 6 to 12 years old, that the project is target the children of those age, from 160 families. And March, August, we are organizing the creative arts workshop to co-create those tools. September, November, we are going to organize a community exhibition on how trauma looks like and how resilience transmission looks like. And our target is to empower 100 psychosocial workers. What's a methodology? As I said, methodology is through the creative methods. That includes the workshop. And the workshop, we organize the workshop with children. Those are some of the tools we are using, the body mapping tools, family trees, image shower. Those are metaphorical tools that are arts-based. We organize with children. And there is also specific workshop with parents, with couples, and then children with parents. And then at the end, we organize what we call family dialogue. And this process, it's a kind of enabling the family interaction and how the parents even can tell to their children the sensitive stories. And we are Rwandans, and it's not easy sometimes to tell our children what happened to us. And so through those workshops and for those tools, we are trying to create. So that's an example of body mapping tool, how it looks like. I think we don't have enough time. Probably we'll share the PowerPoint. You can see the video, how it's worked. It's one. Normally the body mapping tool, it's a tool that helps children to define themselves, what's a trauma, what's a resilience. They define, they show it, and through their thinking, their emotional, their behavior, their somatic feelings. So that's one of the tools. There are so many arts work tools that are being used, and that are also helping parents and children to interact and to share those sensitive stories and the issues. I know we don't have enough time. I want to focus on igitaramo cy'umuryango. Igitaramo cy'umuryango is a family dialogue. That's something culturally that was used. In Rwandan context, we use it to organize that igitaramo cy'umuryango, that family dialogue around the fire. Now we are developing, we are no longer have fires at our home, we have tables. So those, for example, the tools, they are used within a family to organize those intra-family interaction, dialogue, the object illustration, where every family member select an object that can help him or her to share her story to others. And then after, they do a family table, they do a family round, and then they do also a family chair. There is a family chair around that family where every family member sit on that family chair to reflect on what have been said. So that's a session that happened in a family. What are the preliminary findings? The preliminary findings is, first of all, the project have been welcomed by families. And children, they want to explore stories of their parents, of their families. And children, they have a lot of questions to ask. I remember in one of the gitaramo cy'umuryango, I was observing the child, the 10 years child said, asked immediately, who is my grandfather? Can you tell me who is my grandfather? So they have a lot of questions, but also it's enable the communication and the interaction about the sensitive topics. And the connection, it's connected to Rwandan culture because it's used. So we have already created the igitaramo cy'umuryango. I know my fellow Rwandese, you remember what we said, what is said kwishiga. Kwishiga, and sometimes we're saying that kwishiga, it's a way of sometimes transmitting genocide ideology to our next generation. So how can kwishiga be translated on transmitting resilience to our children? So those are the tools we are creating. And so there is a healing. We found a healing for both, including ourselves, the facilitators, because we are Rwandans, we are from, even I'm a psychologist, I'm from this same community. So we realized the healing for both parents, children, as well as the facilitators, psychologists and the facilitators. And we created so many metaphors, the Rwandan metaphors and the proverbs that are culturally appropriate to communicate to our stories and our pain. And we found that the resilience can go in two ways. The parents can transmit to resilience, but also the children transmit to resilience to parents. I remember one of the old man who lost all his children during the genocide, including his wife, and he get married again, and he said in Kinyarwanda, abana baranzuye. Children, how can I translate? The children make me again alive. So there is the transmission of resilience in two ways. So what are the implications? The implication is there is a need of awareness, of course, about intergenerational transmission and the value of family communication, family interaction. In Rwanda, we use the community interaction, community members interaction, survivors, perpetrators together, but it's the time now to go within a family and the interaction between the parents and the children. So the mental health support is a need. We need to engage young people to co-create, to produce. And arts-based method are a very good tool because everybody is an artist. And we can create and we can create. So where we are now, you see we started in January. Last month, we presented this approach in the 6th World Congress on Resilience here in Kigali. Now we are, there was on the 20th a poster presentation at the University College of London. And there are a network of family for every child, and we are trying to export the approach to different countries, and we are presenting it here, and we are going to exhibit. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful to you for that. Thank you so much. Thank you for going through that slide presentation and being able to go through it with saving us some time. Reverend Dr. Emma Jordan-Simpson, someone I know very well, as she is the president of Auburn. Please.
Just a quick minute. Just a quick minute before the Reverend Doctor. So lunch will wait so the panel can have its full time. So please take your time. Thank you.
No, I know what it means to stand in before people who are hungry. So we're going to move quickly. The presentation that we just heard was incredibly helpful and hopeful, not just for Rwandans, but for us in the United States as well. And I'm changing what I had planned to say because of that hope. It matters. The strategies that we employ, the hopeful strategies that we employ that offer healing for children and for us, after we have all experienced incredible trauma. And I am a citizen of the United States. I am a descendant of Africans who were enslaved in the United States. I can trace my father's family back to the mid-1800s in the United States to a plantation owned by a white male Christian. And I can trace my mother's side of the family back to the late 1700s to a white male minister, a Christian minister, who owned the first ancestor that I could find. And although those dates are 1700s and 1800s, the trauma I have experienced has been handed down to me in every generation since. And we were not afforded these incredible intentional strategies of hope and health and healing when slavery ended in the US in 1863, 1865. Instead, what my people were subjected to were black codes that determined where we could go and how we could live in the places that formerly enslaved us. With impunity, religious doctrines fed and formed these experiences that we had after the ending of slavery. But the truth of the matter is that I am an American because my family was stolen, but also because explorers were given impunity, license, theological mandates, a papal bull by the Pope to go and explore, and every place that they found where there were not European Christians, they could seize those lands, they could seize those peoples, they could enslave those peoples because they were not considered to be human, because they were considered also to be the enemies of God. And so the genocide of Native Americans, the enslavement of Black Americans. Those are the birth defects or symptoms of the birth defect of the birth of the United States of America. It's really hard then for us to consider solutions and implementing solutions to racism, to inequity, to disparities without first considering, or without also considering the theologies that give these things power. And so I'm standing here and just hopeful, because we are not without solutions. I came to this conference with a cohort of clergy and theologians and religious leaders from the United States, and we came not with any answers. We came with questions, because we want our country to have a thriving future, and a thriving future not just for, despite what politics says, not just for the red or the blue, but for all of us. And this conference, this gathering of people, what we've experienced here this week has been incredibly hopeful, because we have something that we can take back and build community around. The last thing that I want to say before I sit down is, when I went on Wednesday to Reconciliation Village to sit and to listen to people who are living what it is that we preach about, we were incredibly challenged by that. And one of they of course invited us to come and live in Rwanda, and particularly if the election doesn't go, it's not hopeful. We may take them up on that. But they asked us a question. They asked about the greatness of the United States of America, the stories of our abilities and our strength and our power. And they asked, but why would we want then to kill our president? They love their president. And I said to them, I really want you to understand that there are narratives that are told, there are stories that are told about the United States of America that bear interrogation. Those narratives are about power. Those narratives are about white supremacy. Those narratives shape our very lives every day. And the people in the United States of America who are harmed the most by those narratives are Black and brown, poor people. What is exported as victory, as health, as progress, as strength, is experienced in our communities as oppression, as degradation. It looks like incarceration. It looks like poor health outcomes. It looks like lack of housing. And so the opportunity to come and to learn with you all through this partnership with Aegis Trust, the opportunity for us to ask questions and to be open and to understand the enduring racism that affects us in our lives has been a gift to us. So I'm going to end that because I do want us to move on. But thank you.
Thank you so very, very, very much. Whew. Thank you. Thank you. Doctor. Doing some wonderful things as well.
Good afternoon. I'm going to open my remarks before I get into my prepared remarks by saying that I am grateful. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be here with you. I'm so grateful that I was at the memorial yesterday, and I needed a ride back to the hotel. And I made the decision to get on the back of a motorcycle. And I made that ride all the way from the memorial on that motorcycle, videotaping myself to prove to the people in America that I can ride on a motorcycle in Rwanda and get back safely. So I am grateful. Especially to my friend Genevieve. Genevieve, would you stand up and recognize? I'm with Genevieve, stand up. She's from Cameroon. Thank you for encouraging me to get on that motorcycle. I'm here today to share some good news. Some good news about how do you deal with something that's ugly and make it good. At the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, we represent the legacy of one of the greatest Supreme Court justices that ever lived on this planet in the United States, Justice Thurgood Marshall. A champion for civil rights, a champion for social justice, a champion for doing what is right, and a champion for challenging the system to do what is right. And we have examples of those challenges, and they're successful. 40 years ago, our founder, Dr. N. Joyce Payne, had a meeting with Justice Marshall in his office in the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., and asked him if he would lend his name to this organization, an organization that we focus exclusively on education and using education as that key to change lives, using education as the key to make someone's life better, and using education as a key of lifting up a community in the United States that have been discriminated against, the Black college community. Some of you may be aware, 150 years ago when slavery ended in the United States, African Americans did not have the right to attend a historically white institution. Instead, they created historically Black colleges and universities. Those universities were the sole purpose of preparing a race of people that needed education. Didn't have the right to go to a medical school, so we had to create our own medical school. So these institutions have been the bedrock of helping to create the Black middle class as we know it today in the United States. These institutions have been the catalyst of moving people forward in a very positive and a very intentional way. So I stand here today to share the good news of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and also to give you an example of another very unfortunate incident where we're partnering with another foundation. It's called the Descendant Truth and Reconciliation Foundation. You can Google it. I'm not going to run the history. But it was created in 2016 when a young lady was looking and researching her roots, going back and trying to trace her family heritage, African-American woman, in 2004. And she discovered that in 2016, when they created this foundation, she discovered in her research that her family was on a plantation in Maryland, and that 272 slaves from that plantation, they were sold to another plantation in Louisiana. The people that did that was the Society of Jesus, Jesuits. The reason why they did that was to save a prestigious institution in Washington, D.C. It was called Georgetown College. It's Georgetown University now. They sold 272 slaves because Georgetown College was about to close. Some of you may be aware of this. The Society of Jesus, Jesuits, the Catholic Church, were some of the largest slave owners in America in the 17th century, the 18th century. And they used that to build some of the greatest higher education institutions in the world on the backs of slaves. That's the truth. That's a fact. It starts with acknowledging the truth. And once you acknowledge the truth, then you can move forward. So by acknowledging the fact that these 272 slaves were sold and that they could trace their heritage, and they've been able to identify 10,000 descendants from that 272. And the Society of Jesus came up with a program in 2019 where they committed to raise $1 billion for an education fund. And the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, we're partnering with them to support the descendants of those 272 slaves, where they can go to college now. Members, family members, can go to an HBCU and get an education. That's a positive thing. They are doing this together. This foundation, the Society of Jesus, Jesuits, and the Catholic Church, and the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, doing something positive out of something that was ugly. Now, I use that as an example in terms of how do we move forward. And keep in mind, it starts with the truth.